This is Parent, Boss, Leader.
Parent, boss, leader.
And here's your host. She's a courageous voice for women, parents, and modern workforce leaders alike. She's a keynote speaker and proud mother of two, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at ATR International, Laura R. Munson.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast, Parent, Boss, Leader. Today, I have an amazing guest on the show, Kevin Weissman. We are happy to have you. We're an interactive podcast where we interview leaders across industry, secret sauce, and how these leaders have got to where they are. Today, Kevin, who's the Vice President at Roadrunner Sports, love that company, Kevin. In fact, I buy my sneakers there. We want to discuss your approach to team building, experiences you've had in industrial organizational psychology, and your efforts really to make your company one of the best places to work, being an HR leader. So welcome. Thank you for being here, Kevin.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's jump in. Can you share a little bit about the initial steps you take in forming a new team, especially how you share your personal beliefs to create a strong foundation?
Yeah, well, this is something I saw someone else do a long time ago, and I thought, oh, that's pretty good to start off with, here's the world according to that person, just so you know what you're getting into. And so I thought I'd share, if I've got some strong points of view about a few things, let me give you a heads up. This is where I'm coming from. And with my team, the expectation is that they're going to be doing their thing and operating without me there, but we're all kind of on the same page and we know where we're coming from. One of the things I saw someone do was share kind of this, there's a few things I believe. Some of it's, more specific, business task related, but just I've found the most effective relationships where you kind of have that, Vulcan mind meld and you're all on the same page. So, kind of share that, and it's a good starting point, good kicking off point.
Yeah, I love that. You and I, we had talked a couple of months back, and I loved hearing that about your way of leading the team. You kind of set the tone when you have a new team coming together. You share your beliefs, you're honest, you're transparent. Also, I think that's important for a leader to do, because sometimes leaders will come together and just expect people know. People want the leader to be clear and where they stand as well. So I really liked that. I thought that was worthy to be shared for other leaders to emulate. And I think the reason you do it is something cool about you is you actually have your master's in IO Psych. So industrial and organizational psychology, for those who don't know what that is. How has this academic background influenced your approach in HR?
Well, and proud San Diego State alum. So go Aztecs.
Yeah.
Thinking back, one of the professors said, if nothing else, it'll make you a good BS detector. Because IO psychology actually has a lot of statistics, and I'm not saying I was the best at that. But it teaches you to be able to tell if there's a significant difference between things, or identify the things that matter most, and so that allows you to kind of focus on those things, kind of cut to the chase, and hopefully ask good questions and appreciate the impact that people have on organizations. And it's kind of like an MBA, but more of a focus on the people side of things, getting things done.
Yeah, I like that. BS detector. I think we all made that. In your background, you've worked at Taco Bell, and you mentioned that changed your perspective on academia. Could you expand on that and how you now focus on excellence in the workplace?
Well, early career, I went from grad school to working at places that did research and wrote tech reports and, published things, and more the science side. And going into Taco Bell, was still owned by Pepsi at the time. I got to work with some of the best HR people, best marketing people, some really sharp folks, and we did great things. Sometimes we'd use consultants, but it wasn't generally speaking, we couldn't do it, but either we didn't have the time, but we knew how to keep an eye on them, make sure they're doing what they wanted to do. But the focus was, let's figure out what the greatest impact we can have on the organization and the business is. Let's do that work and then move on to the next thing. Let someone else write about it. This is not about, publish or perish, write journal articles, get written up, someone else can write the book. And a lot of books have been written about a lot of great things that happened, Taco Bell and Yum Brands over those years. And there were a lot of really sharp people with more advanced degrees than mine. It was a little bit of a Camelot experience. I mean, we did some great work, and some people are still there, and people have moved on to do great things. But the organization didn't care. It's like, get it done, make it stick, right? You want to do something that'll have a big impact and make sure it's sustained, and then move on to the next thing. It wasn't about writing papers, publishing, or presenting necessarily.
Yeah, you worked at some really cool brands, and thinking Taco Bell, now Roadrunner. And one of your goals you'd mentioned when we're talking is that you wanted to make Roadrunner Sports a top place to work. So how do you feel you're working towards this, and why is employee engagement so crucial to achieving it?
Well, I think employee engagement is just crucial to running a successful business. And, I've had the pleasure of working in some great workplaces, and, seen them recognized as top places to work. Even the most cynical person would have to agree that if you've got a workforce that's checked out, that's not good for anybody, for the business, right? So having people who are engaged, has to be better. I think that that's the kind of place I would want to work, where people are engaged. It's the kind of, place I'd like to help create. Now, Roadrunner has been a successful business for 40 years before I ever got here, and has a lot of great things going for it. So I'm just looking forward to being able to, add some value, help further bring some of those great things to life, make them an even more successful business for the next 40 years. Specifically, kind of marrying that, how do you look at the culture and the business issues, focusing on like our frontline position, we call a fit expert. In the store, we're really focusing on turnover and retention there. And so, you look at, well, okay, what's contributing to turnover? What can we do to hire the right people, to be more clear and deliberate on what we're looking for, to identify those things, so you can kind of apply some of the science side to differentiators that really identify high performers. Focus on efforts to bring the culture to life, but also to build the manager's capability to help them do that. Because you could have the greatest slogans in the world, but if it doesn't come to life where they work, if the manager's not bringing it to life, that won't matter. So kind of supporting, developing the general managers. And I think everybody, even if they don't want to make it a lifelong career, everybody kind of wants to know, how do I get ahead? So doing the groundwork to look at all the positions we have and clarify the roles and create a transparent path that if you want to get ahead, if you demonstrate these things, then you can be on the bench to be considered when and if this next position opens up. So, it's not rocket science. It's some of those basic things that we all want, but not a lot of companies put the time and effort into focusing on making those known and transparent and available. And, I think that, for that particular position is an example of how we're applying some business and science around, it'll contribute to the culture, to the team members' growth, and the business success.
Yeah, I think you named quite a few powerful nuggets, both for HR professionals listening to this, and then also managers as well, because so much time and attention could be spent on a brand or an initiative. But if the manager doesn't carry it out, or doesn't have the passion behind it, or doesn't break it down day to day, it can be missed. So I think that's very powerful, even mentioning that. And I have a high level of respect for HR leaders, because you lead the people. You're looking like a conductor across verticals, across business units, seeing how to make everybody sort of work together. And I think that's very true, making sure that the managers are able to carry out the initiatives, carry out what the plans are, carry out what the changes are. Kevin, you had mentioned that there's a big difference between corporate and retail work settings. Can you share some of these big differences for our listeners?
Well, a couple things come to mind. One, I remember a study many years ago said if you're looking for a senior leader and you have a choice between someone who only has corporate experience and only has kind of field or ops experience, you're better off going with the one with the field or ops experience. Mm. And that's not always how it's viewed, right? So there's a lot of value in that, but it's very different. In terms of driving a culture, it's a little easier in a corporate headquarters in some cases to kind of bring a culture to life. It can be a lot tougher to bring those things to life in dozens or hundreds or thousands of retail locations or around the country. So kind of recognizing, appreciating the challenge of, it's easy to say for you at the the ivory tower, the puzzle palace, whatever you want to call the corporate headquarters, but out here in the real world, and you got to empathize and appreciate those differences and be practical and, help them succeed. Sometimes you have the luxury of projects that sit on your desk and you got, months to work on them. And, especially in the retail environment, you've got customer and team member issues that come up immediately. You got to deal with it right on the fly. And it's not easy. Depending on the nature of the retail businesses, some are tougher than others. I had a lot of experience in restaurants. So you had, like any other retail business, but then you had, late night or even sometimes 24/7 hours. You had fire and cooking, and you had alcohol, and it creates all sorts of interesting opportunities for challenges.
Yeah, fun new creative ways. Let's pivot a bit. You are a father of 4 grown sons, and we had chatted before, and I thought it was really cool. Your perspective was to help encourage them to become Renaissance men. So for the parenting portion of the podcast, we would love your advice for those of us with young kids. How did you train them?
Well, I don't know if it's fair to say I trained them. We'll see if the HR stuff contributed. There's certainly some parallels. I think of things like career advice, and one of the good pieces of advice I've heard from a career standpoint is you want to encourage people to experience as much as possible as early as possible. It's as important to know what you don't like as it is what you do like and what you're good at. And you don't learn that unless you try a bunch of things, right? And we tried to do the same with the kids, whether it was around sports and, or music or interests or travel. And, they're all their own person. They're all great. We're in Southern California, so we're all kind of water people. My wife and I met on a college swim team. So everybody swims, everybody surfs, body surfs, is scuba certified, but they go off and, from contact sports to surfing, skiing, several of them took music, but some of them didn't want to, so they didn't. It's kind of figuring out, you want them to kind of find what they like, right? And then nurture and encourage that. And so, that's been just the philosophy, that idea. I did kind of say, let them be little Renaissance men, get them exposed to as much as possible. And, it's unfortunate, like in sports, you have little kids who they don't specialize by the time they're 9, they're never going to make the team. That's so unfortunate. We had kids in AYSO and NJV basketball and Little League and all those things too. But,
yeah. No, I think it's such great advice. I'm listening. I have younger kids. It's a good reminder to make time to do fun and different things. And I think your picture in the background behind you says it all. I see a wave. I see palm trees.
Honestly, that was there when I came, but it definitely suits me. But
destiny.
A couple of things I'd share that in California in 4th grade, our kids do the mission project. And so you do a report on a California mission. So one of the things I did with the oldest when he was in 4th grade is you pick your mission And we actually went to it, and kind of, you get the audio guide and the tour thing, and you record them. And, with the fourth grader being the tour guide of the mission. So that stuck. So the next one was like, well, I'm going to go. So we got to go to San Francisco, Mission Dolores, Carmel, Aparissima, Santa Barbara. So it was a little like father-son trip. Everybody knew that was the fourth grade trip, dad and the son. And we just went away for a weekend, and it maybe overlapped Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year up in San Francisco, or, we'd build in other fun things. And there was something else that was shared with me with a franchisee at Taco Bell. He said, one of the best things I ever did, I think it was Larry Durrett, who was a big franchisee in Texas. He goes, when my kids graduated high school, my wife and I said, and he had several children too, like, anywhere in the world you want to go, you let us know. We'll take you on a trip, just you. And so my wife and I did that. And, it was great that, the younger ones maybe stayed with grandma and grandpa. As they got older, there's about a 10-year gap. They stayed without us and probably had more fun without us there, the rest of them. But yeah, they got to pick a place, and they all ended up on kind of European destinations, but some of them were planning it years in advance. They knew exactly where they wanted to go. But I would highly recommend it. It was great. Like 2 weeks, just mom and dad and that kid, and where they wanted to go, what they wanted to see. I don't know.
What a fun family. I feel like I'm going to be calling you offline for parenting tips and advice.
Come on over.
That's cool. In fact, and maybe I'm being selfish, but I might plant this seed in my husband's mind and plan where we're going to be traveling for our kids. And I guess that defeats the purpose. So that's great. Thank you for sharing. Kind of getting back a little bit into personality and aptitude tests. That's one of my favorite parts of HR, really knowing people. So the idea of using them, the personality aptitude test, to guide children in their career decisions is fascinating. You mentioned that you actually gave these type of tests to your kids, which is awesome. So what advice would you give to other parents considering doing this?
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, I didn't set them up like lab rats and experimental on them, but to the extent they were interested in digging deeper into some things, at school, sometimes they'll come home with a vocational assessment they went through. I remember as a kid, like, would you rather read a book or climb a tree? And then it said, you should be a forest ranger. It's like, okay, that's great. But, don't ever let an assessment pigeonhole you. And, early out of grad school, I mean, I worked at what was the Navy Personnel Research and Development Center. I developed selection tools for part of my time there and afterwards. So I get, assessments and the value, the validity of them. And I appreciate them, but use it as an additional piece of information. But yeah, if they were inclined, whether they came home with a vocational tool or were interested in like, well, there's Strengths Finder, maybe learn some things, about yourself, Myers-Briggs. There's lots of other tools out there if you're inclined to want to, get a sense of that. They're already in high school preparing. They're, taking SAT prep or at the time ACT. And, so that's to think about getting into college. This is more about like, okay, what about afterwards? Some of the best stuff that I used is, not necessarily new, but, she's coming up with additional content all the time. Beverly Kay. And, had a chance to meet her and work with her a long time ago. And it just resonated with me, and I wanted to share it with my kids, but if you think about in terms of a career, you spend most of your waking hours at work, and shouldn't it have a lot or as much as possible to do with what you like to do, what you're good at, and what lets you live and work in a way that's consistent with your values and what's important to you, whether that's, I want to stay home and be close to family. I want to travel. I want to be famous. I would die if I was in front of a crowd. It doesn't force me to do that, whatever it is. Right. And, she had some basic little tools that helped you think about that. And, would you rather work with people or ideas or things or, so, some of those, again, if they were inclined, make them available to them, and they could go through those and think about, where do you want to land? What do you want to end up doing, after school?
I think that's a super cool idea for kids. Cause I mean, even me leading my account management team at work, we're about to do personality testing. In fact, Harvard Review has a free tool. So I said, why don't we start there? And you're right. There's so many resources out there for folks to use, both for kids and teams. I think it's a really cool way to know yourself better and also to know one's team better when they're in a position of leadership. Last question, Kevin. So, looking forward, what legacy do you hope to leave at Roadrunner Sports in terms of company culture and individual employee development?
Yeah, I don't necessarily go in with, my own agenda. And I've been here 6 months. It's really about helping Roadrunner Sports be the best Roadrunner Sports it can be, which isn't, try to turn it into Google or Qualcomm or Petco or, other companies out there. So kind of finding out what we're all about, helping leverage and build on that. A combination probably of helping it be an even more successful company going forward, because a growing company allows for the people there to grow as well, right? And it's a lot easier to bring to life, a great culture when a company's growing. So, unapologetically, we're not a not-for-profit, so I want to help them, succeed. HR exists to support and drive the business, but also to help make it a great place for the team members to work, to be able to do good work, have some fun, to enjoy the success, the people you work with, and yeah, I don't know. The legacy is maybe if I come back years later, people will be glad to see me.
That's a good one. And I really do like what you shared about, maybe Roadrunner's not going to be a Google or other companies. You have your own brand, your own feel. And I think that's what's cool about Roadrunner. I mean, even people I talk to in San Diego, all excited about when going. Are you going to get tested for your SASU? And the employees are always great. Naturally, when you see employees smiling in their jobs, they like their jobs. So to me, the brand is good, and what's done behind the scenes is good too. So Kevin, thank you for popping on the podcast today. It was a pleasure to have you. It's good learning a little bit about team building, employee engagement, and kind of figuring out the intersection of parenting and HR too. I love really some of the advice you give to parents about training their kids to be Renaissance people. I like that. I want to use that. So we really do appreciate your insights. Thank you for being here. And to our audience, if you've enjoyed this podcast today, you're welcome to like and subscribe. And Kevin, what's the best way to connect with you? Probably LinkedIn?
LinkedIn's great. Yeah. Shoot me a note.
Perfect. Thank you for being on the show.
Cheers. Thank you.